Yo. Hey, we live again. This is the Rise and Royalty podcast, the greatest podcast in the 317, powered by Numbers Media. Introduce yourself, boss.
I'm Jamar, Cobb, Dennard. I'm an attorney, a father, and a minister.
Hey, it's a blessing to be in your presence, for real. Blessing to be in your presence.
Thank you.
So on this podcast, I want to break down your life story in the next 30 minutes. So without further ado, if you could please start with, what were your hardships in early childhood? Before teenage years.
Said life in 30 minutes, man. That's 40 years in 30 minutes. That's less than a minute a year. But let's go. I think I can do it that fast. I'm just kidding.
Let's turn it up.
So I grew up in a very stable household, which I'm really thankful for. My parents have been married since the 80s. I'm an 80s baby, and my mom was a college professor, my dad an engineer, and they gave me, great financial stability, mental, emotional stability, and it was awesome, especially as I get to know a lot of people now that didn't have that same experience. I count myself as lucky for being able to have great parents and great schools, great education, and really being able to have a foundation that I could build off of. Now, the interesting thing about my life as an adult is I didn't necessarily build positively on that foundation all the time when I was making my own decisions, which is fine. It's part of learning, but I'm really thankful for where I came from. And, I started, my dream was to become a professional pianist and to play and be a musician. And obviously I don't do that now. I play as a volunteer at church. But man, I just want to be on stage like you at one point,
Hey, it's either way, using your gifts to the fullest of your capability. I always think that, especially for the kingdom, then, that's always a beautiful thing, for real. That's always a beautiful thing. So, what I'm really getting from you right now is that, when it comes to your early childhood, you weren't really having a multitude of hardships. You were really blessed in a lot of different ways in your early childhood. So then when you became a teenager, was there anything in particular that you could find that you struggled with, whether it be in faith or whether it be, versus who you are now, struggles or trials and tribulations that you went through in order to get to where you are as a teenager?
So one of the big things that I struggled with as a teenager was my personal identity of who I was going to be and who I am, especially in God. So the first time that I was invited to church, my parents didn't go to church, but one of my friends from high school invited me. And that's when I got introduced to the Apostolic Church. That's when I got baptized when I was 16, received the Holy Ghost when I was 18. So it went from having a great, stable, secular upbringing to now having to position myself and think of myself in my life in a different way. And one of the watershed moments that I had during my freshman year of college was, I mentioned music. I went to a music conservatory when I was 16. I was a music major when I came into college. I skipped my first 2 years of music major work in college because I was that good. But I did. And then at the end of my freshman year, I realized that I had to give some things back to God in order to get everything that He had for me. And as soon as I did that, the next week I got saved, and my life has been on a completely different trajectory since. But there's always been a push and pull in terms of who am I in terms of a secular and fleshly being, and who am I in terms of my calling, and who I've been pursued to be above and beyond this earth.
Hey, I totally understand that. A lot of people do come on this podcast and say that in their teenage years, that's really where they found that became the finding of themselves. Who am I? What am I going to be? What is my purpose? I think a lot of people really do discover themselves in their teenage years in general, especially the late teenage years. So just to kind of, double back a little bit on that, that calling, do you feel like before you were saved, you kind of had an idea of what direction you were going to move in the kingdom? I understand that you weren't going to church, but was it was being a Christ-like man, was that at all a part of you before, you started going to church and got saved and things of that nature?
So I always haven't had and still have an interest in being the best that I can be, right? And for me, especially when I was younger, that was being a good person, a good kid. And so I think being attracted to God gave me a vehicle and an avenue for that goodness, so to speak. But it wasn't my goodness, it was his. But the other thing that is kind of interesting there, and you talked about just being able to understand who we are and also understand, what our identity is. My identity also, shifted as I was growing up, and especially was the music thing and what do I want out of life and what are my goals versus who am I called to be. Now, I remember what I was going to say, that piece about calling. Even when I wasn't in God, talents were still blooming in me, right? Even when I was a small child, I remember in fifth grade, even when I was a small child, I was good at speaking and being an orator. So in fifth grade, I was part of the oration contest at Chime Elementary in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I was number one in my class. And I was like, man, I'm about to kill this thing. I'm going to go to the all-school competition. I'm going to go to the all-city competition. I'm going to win, right? So I got the highest score in my class. And I was going to just coast on that thing. Not coast and not try, but coast like I'm going to win.
Yeah.
So then my teacher said, will you help this other young man? And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to take him to the next level. And he was the worst in the class. Well, I gave him all the sauce, all the juice, told him how to create a great opening and how to rev up the ending and how to have a couple bullet points in the middle and make it a quick, I think it was a 2 to 3 minute speech. Well, the dude ended up beating me in the class.
Whoa.
He won the school and then he got second in the city.
Dang, that's crazy. You trained him and then he became your Achilles heel.
Right. So I was angry. Like I remember like coming home and dive bombing into my bed. And I was just like scratching at this paper with a pencil, making dark marks. And I was just like filled with fury because this kid beat me. But at the same time, I was there and able to help him. Whatever I had in terms of training, knowledge, inspiration, whatever, was great. But obviously at the end of the day, he's the one that soaked it up and took it to the next level. So I'm going to stop that story there instead of being petty. I'm still clearly petty about it 30 years later.
Bro still got the inner beef just brewing. If you want Rise and Royalty Podcast to come to your city, reach out to us now in the description below. There's a lot of people that, as an artist, that I've had the opportunity to work with, collaborate with, grow in a multitude of different ways. I've helped them achieve. I've helped them, in just giving knowledge, and I've helped invest in people's career, And, I've definitely had my downfalls in that.
I think from a leadership perspective, it is great if we can make leaders who are better than us, right?
Yeah.
So as a leader, if we can coach people up, like I'm trying to think of quick sports examples, but they're not coming to me. But if you can coach people up to be all-time record holders and championship winners, and you may have been somewhere in that league, but if you're an even better teacher than you were a performer, and can really motivate and inspire and train people to get to the next level and see what they can be themselves before they can see it, that's an incredible skill and gift to have.
Yeah, because ultimately the coach isn't their efficacy isn't measured on whether or not they can run the routes, whether or not they can throw the ball. Their efficacy is based on whether or not they can train other people to achieve. I think that is very important. That's a good point to make.
Thank you. Man, that's Deion Sanders right now, and he's showing his ability to slowly but surely do that, right? Like he's taking underperforming teams and creating champions based on their league. And he was one of the best players out there. I mean, I just watched a documentary and it reminded me of in the 90s when he was playing baseball and football. It was taking helicopters back and forth to his teams so that he could play in both games on the same day. Right? I think it was 3 games over the course of 2 days. But he was such a great player. But now he's able to come back and elevate entire teams and organizations to the next level because he was such a great player, but because of his mentality and his ability to develop other people.
That's true. Leadership is It's probably honestly my personal Achilles heel, because I'm not good at shepherding. I'm good at being that person that you meet that one day and like I'll sit there, I'll talk to you. I got the motivational speech that's gonna light the fire under you and it's gonna kickstart you into your future. But when it comes to like, all right, like, can you disciple me? Like, or can you talk to me over and like, I'm not good at the day to day continuing to push and like feed into people. I'm just not the best at that.
And that's fine. I mean, do you feel some kind of way about that? Or are you
I
good
really
with,
do because
yeah.
to me, like, for instance, without being too extra right now, one of my biggest problems with one of the leaders in my life is that I personally feel like in the Bible, it talks about how if there's like one sheep that leaves the 99, then the shepherd is supposed to go after the one.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm the one. And I feel like the shepherd has not gone after me. So it's like, and equally in my life, I'm not a good shepherd. So it's like, I don't feel like it's a weird paradox. It's like, I feel like this person is supposed to do this for me, but I feel like equally, I'm not the kind of person who would do that for anybody else. So it's like, I really do think that shepherding is almost just as important as just being capable. Like, yeah, I can run a team if they're like around me all the time, if it's my job specifically to run this team. But it's like, ultimately, if it's not somebody who's like super close to me, then it's like, I'm not good at reaching out. And I feel like a lot of people take like offense or else, in the long run, because I'm not able to do that. Even, even realistically, even with my own wife, you know what I'm saying? I'm not the best at being like, I'm really good at being like, hey, you should do this. I'm not good at every single day being like, hey, you got this. Hey, you're going to make it. Yeah. Hey, you're going to grow.
But you don't have to be, because it sounds like what your gift is that you're able to have shine and allow that shine to persuade people and allow them to follow you because of that shine, because of your gifts and because of your talents. And that's a good thing. In a way, I've got shine too. I'm not trying to say that I'm the bomb, but you can usually tell when you have shine because you walk into a place and you can see people looking at you for no reason. You're not looking at them, but you're like, man, these eyes are on me for some reason, right? And people tend to follow that shine as well. You as a leader will know that you're a leader by the people who are following you. So when I ran for mayor in the city of Lawrence in 2019, we pushed hard. I learned a lesson that people only know what I open my mouth and say. I learned to hustle hard and hustle quietly so that there isn't a target on my back of people coming after me, right? But the thing I learned about leadership is that it's really about the people who are following me that defines who's a leader, right?
Yeah.
So in the 4th of July parade during that campaign, that was the only 4th of July parade in the city. And it was the big thing in the city of Lawrence. And when I say the city, I mean there wasn't one in Indianapolis, the 4th of July, just in the city of Lawrence. So I said, this is going to be big. Everybody in the city of Lawrence is going to be there. There's going to be 10,000 people lining the streets. And we've got to make a splash and make sure everybody knows who Jamar Cobb Dennard for mayor is. So we had a group of Harley guys from the local Harley bar, the motorcycle bar. We had people holding signs, people throwing candy in the back. And then we had an entire dance and drum squad from the east side of another 50 to 75 kids that were dancing and doing their thing and hitting drums. And, we came down and people were like, what is that? Who is that? I can't believe it. And the current mayor, the incumbent, when we walked past him with 100 people, just stood there with a dumb look on his face, right? And when I looked back, I said, that's leadership. It wasn't the one dude who was sitting there in the fire truck with his wife and I think the fire chief, right, waving at people. It was that cat that showed you I'm a leader because of the people that were willing to follow me into the fire. The other thing I'll mention is this. The sheep that was sought after from the 99 by the shepherd, sometimes us as leaders and as people and as followers especially, we don't get the opportunity to be the sheep that's trekked after by the shepherd, we've got to be the prodigal who comes back to the Father.
That's deep. That's deep. That's deep, and I've wondered that. So that definitely gives me some insight. I mean, but we do go to the same church, you know what I'm saying? So we have been currently going through what's called consecration. And my mom definitely said that coming into myself, she feels like coming into whatever my role might be, all those things. Then she feels like this second, like half of consecration is going to be, what kind of comes to me. And I've been realizing like maybe it's just been, you've been to the Wednesday services and stuff. I've been hearing a lot about calling recently. So I feel like something's about to happen, and I need to pay attention. I need to keep my eyes open, know. So I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah. And the other thing that we didn't get to talk about a moment ago when you were discussing gifts, especially from my childhood, and I kind of got sidetracked by that story about that kid that whooped me. It really came down to God started showing me my talents. And so some of the things that, there are three ways that gifts are essentially identified. And I won't stop it at three because I may end up going farther. So one is the talents that God's given us. Second is what he has called us or gifted to us through the Holy Ghost. Third are the assignments that we're asked to do by leadership, whether that's church leadership, work leadership, et cetera, et cetera. So we're usually called into those callings by our gifts, by our talents. And then fourth, but not least, is, and I think I mentioned this, but what God has called us to do, right? So you can sit there and you can say, hey, I'm talented at X, Y, Z, and A. So when I look at those gifts and talents, and I look how they're used in the kingdom, how do those gifts and talents match what needs to be used and what needs to be produced for the body? And then when we're able to match those things up and then say, okay, what are the spiritual gifts that I've been given to be able to overshadow and help me through the Holy Spirit to achieve those goals and that mission and that calling? That's when you really understand who you are for this world and who you are for Christ.
Man, I gotta give you a hand clap right now. You know what I'm saying? Glory be to Elohim, bro. But realistically, I just have to throw it out there that, even on live right now, we got multiple people in our live right now. And like, usually people just continuously like leave out, switch out. Bro, these people are actually listening to every word that you're saying and they're digesting it.
That's awesome.
So that shine, you got that shine, bro. You got that shine.
No, you got that shine.
So it's like, I really do appreciate that. I think that a lot of people need to hear that. I think that a lot of people need to understand, what leadership means, the process of cultivating it, the ups and downs, the gifts that can help somebody, I feel like, achieve, and the fact that it can be generational. A lot of people don't realize that, they're living their life for themselves. But if they live their life in a way that their bloodline prospers, then that makes more opportunity. I have to ask the next question of what hard lessons did you learn in adulthood? Like, so you went through, early childhood, pretty easy. You come into teenage life, it's a little bit more tricky figuring out trying to find yourself in God or in yourself in the flesh or in the spirit, and then now you're an adult. What were the hard lessons that you had to learn as an adult?
So the first one is that my decisions create my future. When I was 26, I rode a bicycle from Los Angeles to Boston. And it was...
What?
Yeah. I was, younger, more muscular and slimmer then. And I could still do it now. Don't get me wrong. It would just be harder. But it was 3,300 miles of riding. It was 33 days. We did it in 55 because we stopped every 2 or 3 days to talk to students across the country about how their decisions created their future. And up to that point, really, I had been kind of cruising through my 20s. I was enjoying myself, having a good time. I had 2 BMWs. They were both light blue. I had a house when I was 24, 25. Like, man, I thought I was balling. However, that was a turning point for me, that trip, because one, I had to pray a lot to get through that trip. I hadn't trained. And so my body was dying from California through about Kansas. Then things got better in Missouri, Indiana, Ohio, and et cetera. But also, one of the things that I learned after that was I wasn't invincible. The way I felt in my 20s and in my teens, like, I'm the man, I can do anything, there are no consequences. There are consequences. You know, one of those consequences ended up being that I got a girl pregnant when I was 29, 30 years old. And we hadn't really been dating very long, and I made dumb decisions thinking that there are no consequences. But that's the thing that actually turned me back to God and turned me back to my calling and turned me back to my purpose. Because when my daughter was born, I said, there is no way that I could be a good father without making sure that she has a God conscience. And the only way that she can have a God conscience is if I have a God conscience. So at 3 months old, we started going back to church, and I had this little 3-month-old infant, this single dude with a light-skinned baby on his lap, you know, and everybody's like, who is this kid? Why does he have this baby? Where's the baby's mama? You know, like all these questions going on in people's heads. But I was determined to make sure that I had a child that knew God and that God loved her and was in her heart. And because of that, now I've got a 13-year-old that's saved, a 13-year-old that has a God conscience, a 13-year-old that wants to do right, wants to do well. You know, she asked me for my playlists. So, you know, she gets the R&B playlist, the trap gospel playlist, and the gospel playlist, right? Yeah. And, you know, she soaks it up. She loves it, and she's a good kid.
She's an aspiring model. I will say, bro has been taking her to the, and she's been killing the competitions. Mm-hmm. Got to throw that out there.
Yeah, number one at the American Royal Beauties state, going to national in July. That's right. That's right. Hit that foghorn one more time. Was part of Midwest Fashion Week. Yeah, she's a good kid. Yeah. But it's because I made the tough decision early from bad decisions that I wasn't invincible, that I had to get my head focused and be a good man, good father, and produce something different for the rest of my life.
I agree. I can definitely see that, you know, because I think that's I guess I never thought of it like that, but I think that that's something that I've struggled with in my adulthood. You know, at 26, you know, there's been a lot of decisions that I've made that I didn't realize how effectual they were to my future until now. Like, I'd be thinking to myself, like, I've really spent the better part, and I feel like this is, you know, one of the things that I feel like kind of separates me in a lot of ways from certain people. Oh, it's finally out. I feel like this is one of the things that kind of separates me from people. But ultimately, I feel like I have, because of all of my affiliations and my connections in the world of nefarious activities, for the lack of better terms, then like I really have spent the better part of my adult life incarcerated. I've spent the better part of my adult life always in trouble, going through all kinds of different things, you know, and I don't think that I think personally that the reason that I disconnect, I think in a lot of ways, is because sometimes I just don't feel accepted. You know, I feel like I don't feel connected. And I think that I'm starting to realize now that all of those decisions that I made in the past, then that's kind of what created that. That's kind of what cultivated that separation. I separated myself from those things. Mm-hmm. And in separating myself from those things, then I've ended up in this great void, if you will. Mm-hmm. But give me just a second. As my boy Ollie would say, was goody. I'm not sure if y'all tapped in yet, but this is a City Flooders hat. If you want your logo, your brand, you got a cup, you got a chain, you got a hat, you got a shirt, just go ahead and reach out to me in the comments below, or you can hit my inbox. Peace.
So you just dropped some heavy stuff, and then good thing is you gave me a chance to think, and I didn't take the opportunity to think. But the thing you mentioned was that your decisions are creating your future right now.
Yeah.
And the tough thing for me is that my decisions did create my future, and I could see them over the course of the last 20 years. And I made some poor decisions, and I made some good decisions. Good decision, riding across the country on a bicycle. Good decision, helping, the Little Red Door Cancer Agency have the largest Zumba class in the United States, with over 2,500 people Zumba dancing in Military Park for cancer and wellness. It was a good decision to close my business and go to law school. It was a good decision to run for office. But in the midst of that, I made a bunch of other poor decisions, like the person who I chose to marry wasn't a good decision. People show us who they are the first time they show us, and I didn't believe that. I also saw red flags, and I didn't believe them. And then as a result, I had 6 years of hurt and pain and backstepping in my life and not being able to move forward and not be the best person that I could be and not have the type of excellence that I knew that I could achieve because of that decision. So the good thing that you have right now is that you have your youth, and me right now, and my focus, especially after coming off of divorce, is putting one foot in front of the other in terms of decisions. So it's not, I got to make all these great, big, fantastic decisions so I can be the best. It's what one decision can I make today to be successful? One of my business coaches says, what is the thing that you're willing to do now that somebody unsuccessful wouldn't be willing to do? And I'm like, okay, so is it take a nap time, or is it make 5 more calls to prospects?
That's deep.
Is it drive past the people who I think could buy my services? Or is it just go and stop and knock on the door real quick? There's this cat that came. I was sitting downtown on Illinois Street at the Indianapolis Bar Association, and I was just sitting by the window working. I had a suit on that day, and I was just in my zone. And then all of a sudden, this guy comes banging at the door, and he had a suit on. I thought he was another attorney, but I was going to open the door like it's downtown, whatever. It's not my place. So the woman who ran the place went and talked to him. She ended up shooing him away. Thank you. I didn't need to talk to that dude. But he was trying to make a sales call. He walked past the window, saw me. I was well-dressed. He doubled back and tried to pursue that business. And I was like, you know what, dude? Even though I didn't want to talk to you, I have respect, right? Because he was willing to do the thing that unsuccessful people wouldn't be willing to do. And he made a good decision to make that call, because every no leads you a little bit closer to the yes.
It's crazy that you bring that situation up, because the way that I always train all of my homies that want to work with me or want to collaborate in any way, shape, or form, I always bring it up to them like this. I'm like, at the end of the day, we're from the trenches. You feel me? I was like, so, I mean, all of y'all have met a crackhead. I was like, and at the end of the day, I mean, they don't have anything. They don't have no house. They don't have no job. They don't have nothing. I said, and at the end of the day, they will spend all day trying to cultivate whatever sort of financial gain they need to in order to get whatever drug they want. I said, even though it's drug fueled, take away the drug fueled scenario. I said, they have the hardest, strongest work ethic in all of humanity. So it's like, why don't we have that? I was like, if you can't work stronger, if you can't work harder, longer than a crackhead, I was like, then we can't even pursue the same goal. Because at the end of the day, for instance, my day today literally has been like, since 1 o'clock, it has been nothing but work. It's been nothing but, okay, got to go over here, shoot a music video.
What's driving that?
What's driving that is passion. Yeah. Pure passion.
Crackheads are driven by addiction, and they'll sell a sock for a crack rock, right? And I remember I want to tell this story about one of the first crackheads I met, who was actually on the street. It was kind of funny. I was doing a police ride along, and the police officer said, okay, hold on, I'm going to go talk to this crackhead real quick. She'll tell me what's going on in the neighborhood. So he stopped, and he was like, Tamika, come here, girl. And she was like, what do you want, officer? And he was like, you smoke any crack today? And she said, nah, I ain't smoked no crack. I ain't smoked no crack, but I heard Bookie's over there doing a blah, blah, blah. And he said, okay, well, thank you for the information. Tamika, you smoke any crack today? Yeah, I smoked a crack rock. But you can feel the hustle because there's an addiction there, and that's what's pushing them. But for you and I, it's passion, it's our future, it's our vision, it's God. It's those things that like are burning inside of us to get us to hustle all day, every day.
That's real talk, and maybe that's something that I also need to implicate in that bring up. Like, you feel me? I need your passion to be as addictive to you as it is for like this person, or I need that your drive to be as addictive as this person. Because I really do think that because it exists, that means that it is a part of us. It is a part of us to be so focused, so willful that like this is the only thing we're focused on. That exists in human nature. Of course, for a lot of people, it exists because of chemical imbalances, but that doesn't mean that it is not practical, that it's not possible. So as my final question, I want you to give your shout outs. As my final statement, I kind of want you to give your shout outs to the people that, you love and you care about, the people that you feel like supported you. And if you could give us a word of wisdom for the future, I'd appreciate that.
Ooh, a word of wisdom. That's heavy. I'll have to think about, I know what it is. So I do want to thank God because like we said throughout this whole story, I wouldn't be the person who I am, the good stuff and the bad stuff, without him leading me through my entire life and loving me at the hardest times. Because it's at the hard times when he really, really shows up. I'm thankful for my parents and their stability and always being there for me. I'm thankful for my daughter who, she probably doesn't know this, but changed my entire life and my entire focus, and me from going to probably leading myself to destruction to getting back on the right track. So I think in a big way, those are the four technically biggest folks that I would like to thank and that are my people: God, parents, my kid. The last thing that I'll say is I read this book. So I used to be really involved in politics. When I say really involved, it was 10 years of knocking on doors.
You lightweight look like a politician. Like I could see you being the Indiana senator.
Yeah, well, that's out of my future now, and I'll tell you why. Unless God says something different. But I was knocking on doors, walking in parades, handing out flyers, making phone calls, raising money, all kinds of stuff for a decade. And ran for office, and I missed winning that race by 1.8%. It was 190 votes. So if 90 people had flipped their decision that day or decided to go to the polls, we'd be having a different conversation today. Yeah. But even after all of that, I read this book called Jesus Politics by Phil Robertson, the Duck Dynasty guy. Whether you like Duck Dynasty or not, or whether you like his controversial positions or not, the main theme of the book is make all of your decisions through the lens of Christ. So we're not voting for a particular politician. We're not voting for a particular policy. We're not living by a particular means, and we're not making our decisions through our own minds. It's filtering everything of, one, what's the will of God, and two, even more important, what does the Word of God say about this thing? So after I read that book and after I experienced what I experienced in my life, I said, I've got to make a change in how I'm thinking about things. And so I left politics. I said, look, either party ain't doing the right thing. Either party's politicians aren't doing the right things. So I need to make sure that I take a step back and look at the entire world through the lens of what Jesus is doing, what he's saying, and then move forward. And it served me well.
Hey, that's a blessing. That's a blessing. Look through the lens of Christ, and then that's how you'll find the future, That's a blessing for real. Well, I thank you for coming out here. For real, it's definitely been an insightful cast. I can't wait to put this out, man. I definitely think that a lot of people need to hear what you got to say about leadership and the growth mindset and stuff like that. So I definitely appreciate that. Man, big shout out to Numbers Media, hey, for powering this podcast, making everything possible. Bringing us together so that, we could definitely influence the future generations. And you have a blessed day, boss.
Appreciate you.